You're listening to the Exhibitionist podcast, hosted by Nicola Reeder and brought to you by inspiringexhibitors.com and Pro Extra, a wholly owned subsidiary of 12th Man Solutions Limited.
Hi there, and welcome to episode 16 of The Exhibitionist, the podcast. Once again, thank you so much for joining us, and we are delighted to have you tuning in. Shortly, we will be handing over to our conversation with Josh Rifkin, who is the CEO of Flatworks over in the US, and he came up with a really creative solution for those American exhibitors who were struggling with the build times on their stands. But there's some great tips in there for UK-based exhibitors as well. So what a roller coaster of a week it's been here at Pro Extra this week with the launch of our book, The Exhibitionist, which you no doubt will have seen all over social media. We weren't exactly sure when Amazon were going to publish it, so we had a little celebration on Tuesday night with the local business community up in the Northeast to say thank you for all their support during the period we were writing the book. So a great night, a few beers, and then word came through that actually Amazon were releasing it on Wednesday morning. And then you're kind of in a race for bestseller. You're continuously refreshing the page to see, have we done it? Did we get there? Are people actually buying it? And for all of you out there listening who did buy it, thank you so much. We hit the number one spot in both the sales and marketing category and business life category. So 2 number one bestseller statuses in the same day. And we're still riding high in the charts for a new entry. So thank you so much. The ebook and the physical book are both available on Amazon and in a range of good bookshops now, but also available through our website. So that's www.inspiringexhibitors.com, where we will also personally sign your book and put a little message in for you. So please grab a copy, and if you do read it, let us know what you think with a review on Amazon. So what else has been ripping up the exhibitions industry this week? Well, you may have seen some of the Twitter furore about the dress code of some exhibitors down at the Business Show 2019 at Excel. And it's something that we've raised before, and what I absolutely don't want to do today is get into the rights or wrongs of that particular example. I'm sure if you want to find out more about it, you can have a look on any of Google or the BBC sites that reported that story. Certainly in our experience, I wouldn't say that the dress code that that particular exhibitor was employing was particularly explicit, certainly not compared to some of the ones we've seen in the past. But it does just raise the point again about how you use staff and the perception of those staff on your stand. Agency staff can be a real asset to your show, particularly if you're short on people and short on time. But Lee Alley is quoted, who's a good friend of ours over at Expo Stars Interactive, and he was just talking in some of the news reports about how it has to be, how your staff have to be more than just looking smart, professional, or whatever the dress code that you want to employ. There has to be some substance where they can start a conversation with visitors about what your proposition is, how you can help solve a visitor's problem, and what you're going to do next to follow up the engagement and the conversation with them. And Lee's worked really hard to create a band of people across the world who are commercially trained and are much more than booth babes, which is not my phrase. That's the phrase that's been used and reported this week. So we're not saying don't use agency staff, far from it. And we're not saying don't dress smart and professionally. I think it just raises the point once again about the perception of what people are wearing and how that is delivered to visitors. I think the difficulty, particularly this week, was that it was a business show, and perhaps booth babes, again, not my phrase, isn't the best reflection of the female role in business in general. And I think perhaps at other shows might possibly have created less of a storm. But I shall let you do the reviewing on Google and the BBC and see what your thoughts are. By all means, tweet us and get in touch if you think that you have something to add to the debate around whether booth babes are or are not relevant in 2019. So we will hand you over to a great conversation now that we had with Josh, as I mentioned. So Josh has a number of businesses over in the US, but he built a company called Flatworks a couple of years ago, which is, I'll let him explain it better than me, but it's really easy self-build stands, eco-friendly actually as well, because he'd picked up a problem when he was doing exhibitions, when he was working in the publishing industry, with particularly in the US, exhibitors who were having to wait a long time to get the crates that they needed into halls, get their stands packed down, and we're just losing so much time. So he's come up with a really innovative new solution that we think could be a great solution for lots of UK exhibitors. So enjoy the conversation. On this week's episode of the podcast, we are delighted to throw over to San Diego, very excitingly, where we're going to be speaking to Josh Rifkin of Flatworks Displays. So welcome on the show, Josh.
Thank you so much for having me.
Brilliant. And what's the weather doing for you over in San Diego? Well, this evening for us, this morning for you.
Yeah, it's 10:30 here. It's a little bit gray, kind of typical for San Diego. We call it May gray. And we're just waiting for the sun to come out and get to the beach.
Oh, it sounds perfect.
Love it here. Yeah.
Sounds perfect. Josh, let's just start by you giving us some details on your background and what brought you to the exhibitions industry.
Well, I've probably logged over 400 days in the Javits Center in New York City. So some would cringe at that thought, but I've grown to love it for a few reasons. I was the sales director for a publishing company, an art publisher called Pomegranate, and we exhibited there quite a bit, as well as 15 other shows throughout the year. And in that capacity, we had a great stand in New York City and in Frankfurt for the the Frankfurt Book Fair. And all the other shows, we had these tiny little booths, and they were kind of shabby, pipe and drape and whatnot. But really exhibiting at all of those shows got me a good insight into all the costs of drayage and freight, as well as the union labor costs of setting up booths. And over those 14 years exhibiting out those shows, I actually ran into a friend of mine who had a toy company who had come up with a similar concept to what we're doing right now. We worked a little bit on that. He's an industrial engineer. And we came up with a system that allows you to set up your booth without any tools, and which requires no union labor. And we pack it all into a very small box, which becomes your table. So this allows you to no longer wait for your booth or your crate or your pallet at the end of the show, which cuts down on time on leaving. So we're just trying to find all the pain points that I experienced as the sales director for a publishing company exhibiting internationally, nationally at large shows as well as small shows. And we've been developing that. We developed it for about a year, and then we launched 2 years ago. And we've had great success in, selling to companies like Rawlings and Nixon and, great brands that we've known for a long time, as well as some small up and coming companies. And everyone's been giving us some great feedback. And we're probably on round 10 of our renditions of this booth. And we're really proud of where we've come and where we're going.
It sounds brilliant. I think just for our UK listeners, Josh, it'd be useful if you could just give us a little bit of explanation just on union rates and labour costs in America, because it's very different over there. And actually those union costs, when you've got to get people in to build your stands, they can really push your budget up quite a lot.
They sure can. We actually have gotten the rates for nationally, just so we know. It can be upwards of $200 an hour for a union labor in New York City. And there's a minimum of 4 hours if you book them ahead of time. In some cases, they require a supervisor, which could end up being $250 an hour. So you can imagine how quickly those costs will go up. And that's not only for installation, but also dismantle. So when I worked with Pomegranate, we had 8 hours, 2 laborers, which is a total of 16 hours for setup, and then 12 hours for breakdown. So those costs are pretty astronomical for a small company.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't have the choice to say, do you know what, we're just going to rock up and do it ourselves. You kind of have to use union labor to get your booth built.
You do. They have requirements there. Anytime there's the need for any tools, unless it's an Allen key or something small, you're setting up a point of sale display. But any weight-bearing wall, they do require union labor to step in and set up your booth. And so that's why we came up with a system that's flat pack, requires no tools, and allows you to set up on your own.
Yeah, so for anybody who might not be aware of you in the UK, it's really worth visiting your website and having a look at what you do. I was really impressed with it, and it is that kind of flat pack lift the bits out, put them together in so many different combinations. So just give us a bit more of an idea about what Flatworks actually is and why the sorts of things you've thought about as you've developed it.
Yeah, so we had designed this so that the crate itself would be no larger than a pallet. So each panel is within 42 by 18 inches. So they all fit into this nice small crate, which then becomes your table. They just slot onto each other at 90-degree points. There are flat packed tables and chairs and all sorts of technology out there. But what we did was we created these 8-foot columns that conform to your standard 10 by 10. I'm going not off of metric systems, but 10 by 10 increments. So we erect a column and you connect another column with either shelves or slat wall. So what we did was we created a system where you use these blocks that you can push into the inside of your column. It creates a channel to drop in slat wall, and then we have a joist that holds those columns together. There is absolutely no tools whatsoever to set up a weight-bearing wall within that 8-foot height and those 10-foot increments, which are our standard kind of exhibition spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I watched the video online of a stand going up, I kind of looked at it as somebody who is very untechnical and very unskilled in any of that kind of area and thought, do you know what, I think I could probably give that a pretty good go myself.
Yeah, it's kind of like play plaques. I don't know if you've ever worked with those little flat pieces. It's very similar to that. We've just added some utility functions within those panels that allow you to incorporate all the merchandising things that you see in retail. So we're just basically trying to mimic retail within the confines of an exhibition, which is 8 feet tall by 10 by 10, sometimes 5 feet. And so the whole design is meant to stay within the guidelines of trade shows and avoid as many costs as you possibly can when you enter that building.
Yes, we often hear from our clients, how do we avoid as many costs as possible? So it's it's good to hear. But it sounds like a really great solution for small to medium-sized exhibitors. So what do you think makes a really great exhibition stand for those smaller companies that might be a little bit tighter on budget?
I think keeping it simple, a simple display for your products, and I think curating your selection is important, and the design of the booth can help with that. And that's kind of why we've always tried to design it so that we're not allowing you to over merchandise, but at the same time, there's a lot of companies out there or a lot of systems out there that sell you a lot of structure that really doesn't have much merchandisable space. It's more of a giant graphic. And I think, having that functionality and that straightforward functionality to mimic retail, whether it be slat wall or shelves, is pretty important for a stand design. I think lights are also just as important. I mean, I see so many booths that are set up without lights, and you could have the best booth in the world, but without any lighting, you're not going to see much of your product.
Yeah, two really interesting points there. You've mentioned it twice in terms of mimicking retail. So that's one that, not a phrase that comes up that often actually, but when you think about a trade show stand being your shop window for your business, it makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. And the lighting thing is something that, again, people will leave probably till the last line of their budget. And if they don't have enough, it's the thing that they cut, but actually is really crucial to highlighting everything you've got on your stand that's brilliant.
It is. It's interesting because lights don't cost that much. It's just a matter of having a system that enables you to light the parts of the booth that have your product on them. I mean, you can order Parcan lights at the show. Those are quite expensive. So you want to find a solution that will sit inside your booth that can clamp onto the panels that you have. And we just use some LED arm lights that clamp on because all of our panels are half-inch panels. We recently had requests to light and downlight shelves. So it's great. I mean, I'm listening to all of our customers and saying, hey, can you do this? I've had this pain point and that pain point. So we just had a souvenir company say, we want this fairly large booth. It's about 20 by 40 booth. Lots of keychains and magnets and mugs. And so they want them all on shelves, but there's all that shadowing effect. So what we're doing is we're taking a shelf and we're running a galvanized metal on the bottom. And we've worked with an LED company that actually has these great linkable LED bars that are magnetic. So now we can order these bars and we can just kind of pop them underneath the shelf and connect them to the shelves above and then power each wall with lighting. I'm really excited about this new addition. I think that's something that anyone can do with I mean, these are aftermarket pieces. We're just trying to incorporate them into our system. But I think lighting is important, whether it be a downlight or an accent light or highlighting your product. No matter what you're doing, that light needs to shine. So we're focusing more and more on that lately. Yeah.
So lighting's one of the things that exhibitors can often get wrong. What are some of the other things that you've seen in your travels around exhibitions that you think exhibitors have just got that bit wrong about their stand?
Again, I think a lot of times they're not utilizing the back wall. Smaller companies especially are using a lot of tabletops and then still leaving the show provided curtains, which can be any color under outside the rainbow. It could be blue and purple and white and pink. Covering that back wall is important. And a lot of times the only way to do that is with a retractable banner or a pillowcase graphic. And then what you're getting is just nice big billboard, right? But you're not actually getting products out and visible to the customer where they can actually touch and feel it. And in most cases, it's going to be lower down on, say, a 33-inch table, with maybe potentially some risers here and there. I just don't think got the impact that you're looking for. And a lot of things I see from small companies is that, and I talk to a lot of buyers because I used to sell to a lot of buyers, and I used to be on the other side exhibiting. They would always tell me if they walk by a booth that just doesn't quite look like it's up to snuff, doesn't have the lighting, they feel like they may not actually be able to deliver their goods. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a reflection on whether or not your company is going to be able to serve the buyer's needs. So I think it's really important you step forward with the right foot. And if you're going to exhibit at a show or two or three, I would just select one and do that one right.
It's such a great point, and something we talk about with our clients all the time, in terms of, don't think about doing four and only spending a few £1,000s on each. Just do one really well, get the right people there, have your stand looking brilliant, have your staff all trained up, spend the money on getting that one right. Because as you say, if people kind of think you've done half a job, cut corners, not really invest, well, all of that impacts really negatively on, as you say, your ability to deliver.
Right. And also, if you're bringing your A game to too many shows and you don't have the budget for it, you're going to run out of money.
Yeah.
So I've seen that as well. So, and I think there's a lot of great niche shows out there that you need to do the research before you select what show you're going to do. I've done some amazing shows in the U.S. that specifically targeted, say, museum stores or national parks or very specific channels. I think those are really interesting to explore as well, and bring a nice, compact, clean, say 10 by 10 booth, but always select a corner. I think, because you're going to get a lot more traffic, a lot more visibility, and the only way to utilize a 10 by 10 on a corner is to actually utilize the back wall.
So that's the big tip of the episode so far for anybody listening. It's always go for a corner plot. You will get far more traffic. So we'll give you that one for free to our listeners.
Yep.
So we kind of talked about budget, and it can be really difficult. We know some of the internal challenges that exhibition event managers can have in big businesses, where exhibitions have this perception of being very expensive and maybe not delivering a huge amount of value. So the budget needs to be spent, it needs to be invested. But what are some of the really smart ways of using budget more effectively?
I mean, you have to have a checklist of the things you'll need at the show site. Pre-flighting your setup, doing a planogram. I mean, time is money. Setting that booth up quickly is pretty important, I think. I know a lot of customers that actually take pictures of their pre-flight, bring it to the show, and able to planogram that out and get done with set up a lot faster, probably send less people as well. On that note, I mean, I do know a lot of people that Airbnb and staff bring 3, 4, 5 staff into a show to save money on housing, because that can get quite expensive in some cities. I would say don't overship product. Ship what you need. I think a lot of people ship too much, and that can add up a lot, especially when you're talking about freight and drayage. Drayage being, $1 in, $1 out. And in some cases, freight can be more than that.
Yeah. I know when some of the big food and drink shows that we work on in the UK, and it's only kind of UK to UK delivery, but they'll bring in a huge amount of stock thinking they're going to sample thousands and thousands of people. But you're at a food show, and actually visitors after a while start to get a little bit
yeah.
fatigued, and you'll never get through as much stock as you think you do. And then the cost of shipping that, particularly if it's something heavy like beer in bottles or something like that, it can cost you a fortune to get rid of all that stock out the other end. So it's a really good point about being really lean and only taking exactly what you need to the show, only taking exactly the number of staff that you need, finding ways of booking your accommodation early or using Airbnb. So all those start to eat into a budget.
And I think that checklist, there's certain things like you don't want to be renting extension cords and purchasing batteries and snacks on site. So some of that stuff is important, because once you're inside that convention hall, everything is 2 or 3 times the price.
Yeah, we have that in the UK as well.
Yeah, I imagine there's a lot of similarities there. The union labor may be a little bit different, but yeah.
So you talked a couple of times about pain points and trying to take out the pain points for exhibitors. What were those pain points that you identified that some of your clients were having?
Well, I mean, it's really the union labor is one of the number one ones, given the fact that it's between $100 and $200 an hour. So being able to set up the booth on your own was important. And I always like the idea of, a booth in a box and having that crate become the table. And it's interesting as I talk to different exhibitors, depending on whether it be the person setting up or being the owner, right? Like they're seeing the benefit of the bottom line, and some are seeing the benefit of how's this going to affect me setting up the booth. Yeah. And I think that pain point is critical to the success of the show, the happiness of the staff. So if they can set up and they can leave sooner, everyone's happier. A lot of times, our booths can break down about an hour and you're on the way to the airport and everyone hasn't even gotten their crate yet. So that crate staying in the booth is really important. And we've gone through many renditions of this to make that a beautiful crate where we're actually using silicone edge graphic frames, which then you can push in stretch fabric to panel up all 4 sides. I mean, that said, like if you have a large crate, and I've seen companies do this where it may not be our system, but if you have a large crate, why not utilize that as some sort of graphic representation and have a custom silicone edge graphic frame built for that? So if you already have a system and you're not in the market to buy a new one, you could always go buy an SEG system and surround that crate and keep it in the booth.
Yeah, absolutely. Create some extra branding space and getting your logos, etc., out there for people to see.
And, I mean, unless it's the same size as your booth, but there are so many pain points to being inside that convention hall, but the main ones are really freight, drayage, and labor. Those are the most expensive parts of doing the show. Yeah. And so if you can reduce that crate size to within a pallet, and then throw all your products on top of that pallet, which is your crate, that's saving you time, saving you costs, and you're not shipping in oversized items. All of that equals those 3 savings: drayage, freight, and shipping. In some cases, the shows include drayage, but they're factoring that in. Yeah. You still have to pay the freight and you still have to pay the labor.
Yeah, absolutely. And in developing your product, how aware were you of sustainability and minimizing the environmental impact of the exhibition industry? Because we know as an industry we have a problem with sustainability and our environmental footprint. So what were some of the things that you were thinking about and that you've done to really minimize that impact wherever you can?
Well, we wanted this to last a long time. So when we take this core panel that we have, which is a 1/2-inch ply, and it's actually is a poplar, which is 25% lighter. So we're saving money on the drayage, which actually equates to gas, right? And shipping and all of that get transporting your booth to and from your facility. But the ability, and we've only been around for 2 years now, and some of our clients have used our booth 15 times. We're predicting at least 50 shows with this booth. Now, if one panel breaks, we can just cut another one and we can ship it out. So I'm excited to see how long our booths last and stay looking pristine the way they are. But 50 shows is a lot. So the reusability part is huge. I would love to say that we're using an upcycled core. We are looking into trying to find something lightweight that's still quite strong and rigid. We're always going to keep pushing forward in trying to better the footprint of our product. But the main point was that this is a something that can be reused over and over and over again, and it's lighter than most weight-bearing systems, and that's kind of where we're heading with that reusability and sustainability.
Brilliant.
There's a lot of customers, that we talk to that are potentially prospects or clients that used to do this, but a lot of people go to IKEA or Bed Bath & Beyond and they buy a shelf system and they buy maybe 10 of them and they leave them at the show. Those always end up in the landfill. And it just makes me cringe when I leave that show floor and I see all of these wounded soldiers throughout the convention hall.
Absolutely. And what are the other areas that you think exhibitors, whatever stand they're using, how can they be more sustainable and more aware of lowering the environmental impact they're having with the stand that they're using?
Well, like I said, stop buying furniture and leaving it at the convention hall, but and also, not using, the non-biodegradable materials such as foam core for signage. That's another big thing. What we use is an aluminum composite material, which is going to last a lot longer. I get that lifestyle images come and go and you're going to have to re-update them. But when it comes to your logos and kind of your perennial signage, you could come up with something that is going to be more durable. And I think these massive, when you're doing a larger signage, you can use stretch fabric, right? And you can pull that over a pillowcase, aluminum frame, or whatever aftermarket pieces are out there. I think those are better uses because they're not disposable. That said, we have done some large format foam core, and that's kind of one of the only ways to kind of go higher. If you want to get to like an 11-foot tall stand, add that extra footage. And we're working on a system so that we can actually use aluminum poles and we can get that stretch fabric so that can be reusable. I try not to use foam as much as possible.
I think we, as an industry, we're all aware that we need to work harder. And, a lot of people that we're speaking to are saying now they're not printing off a lot of their literature. So previously there'd have been brochures and leaflets and flyers all over the show floor and in the bins. And people are now saying, actually, we're not going to give those out anymore. We're just going to have them as either on a USB stick or we'll email it to you after the show, because at least that's a reason for you to contact the people that you really want to keep in touch with some more of your big brochures and your bigger material. And they're not just going to end up in a bin. They're going to arrive on someone's computer, maybe when they're sat at their desk and they've got 5 minutes to actually give it a bit more attention. So it's, I think, little things like that exhibitors can be thinking of.
I think that's great. Something smaller, a smaller flyer with a link to, the full catalog is probably best. And a lot of times these buyers are walking these massive shows and they have 4, 5, 6 bags. They can't even fit any more stuff in there. The one show that I love more than anything, but I also cringe at, is the Expo West Natural Products Show in Anaheim. It's all about organic. It's all about upcycled and recycled. But every single stand is sampling their product in little plastic cups and little plastic spoons. I don't know what can be done there, but if there's one industry that is not quite doing it, it is probably food, right? Because they have to serve it. It has to be hygienic. And fortunately, it's not every industry that has that issue, but that's one industry that I would love to be a part of more and try and help with and be a part of the move towards upcycling, recycling, and all of that, and just being better to the environment.
Yeah, and the solutions will be out there. We had the London Marathon in the capital just this weekend gone, and obviously there's tens of thousands of people running in that race, and they're giving out water and Lucasade on the way around to help people drink, and people just throw those water bottles down on the road. And this year, for the first time, they had little seaweed capsules. So you bit the top off the capsule, you drank your drink, and then you actually ate the seaweed capsule afterwards. So
that's great. That's great.
No bottles. So there will be solutions. It's just going to take us a while to get there, I guess.
Oh, for sure. They're just expensive right now, but it's something that has to be done. And there's a lot of great companies doing great things at that show that I mentioned. So it is one of my favorite and the one show that I just need some help for sure. But yeah.
Interesting. So we've talked a lot about stand design and pain points and how people can be more sustainable. The big thing that is just as important to your exhibition delivery is your team and how your team perform. And what should exhibitors be thinking about in terms of their team when they're actually designing their stands? Are there things you can do with your stand design that will make it easier for your team to perform really well once the show doors open?
Yeah, I mean, the team is crucial. I mean, when we say team, the team that is going to be at the show, and those are the people we're talking to when we're designing the booth. So we take that into consideration all the time. So, because of past clients' requests, our system's improved immensely, and we try to come up with solutions specific, but still in the range of what we do. I think you'd really need to decide what it is and what your product and how it's pegged. And again, I could bring up mimicking retail. I mean, it is important. You have to determine how you want your product to be envisioned by the buyer at retail. So how do you do that? You planogram out all of your products and you figure out how that needs to be merchandised, and you go and find a solution that enables you to do that. At the same time, still having some space for you to create graphics that are impactful, that convey who you are in maybe one tagline. I mean, it is a billboard. When you have people walking the show and they're walking down the aisle, they've got 3, 4, 5 seconds to get your attention. And I think that the most important thing is having some sort of impactful graphic out front, and then curating the product on the right type of wall for your product.
Yeah, I think anything you can do to just make sure you grab that attention, and it's easy for your staff to start having, or your team to start having a conversation with a visitor, because people tend to be quite nervous. We have this assumption that doing a trade show is really easy and everybody loves it, and why wouldn't you enjoy a few days out of the office meeting your customers? But actually for some people it's a really anxious time and really nerve-wracking, and to stop and somebody and have a conversation. Actually, if your graphics are doing some of the work and somebody's already interested, you've kind of broken the ice a little bit, and it becomes much easier to say, you've noticed our logo or our product, or our, if you've merchandised it like retail, somebody's picking something up and looking at something. It's much easier to start that conversation.
I agree. I mean, you obviously have to send the right staff to the booth in order to make sure that they're outgoing and all of that. But I think that's kind of a given. But to make it a little bit easier, like you said, I mean, having the right graphics and having a compelling, brightly lit booth that's not too overly merchandised.
Yeah.
When I worked at the publishing company, we would bring 3,000 SKUs into a 10 by 30. It's just,
wow.
It's busy. The buyer walks in and they go, oh, where do I start? Now they know that they're going to write a nice order and everything's going to be, because they've been ordering for us from a long time, but they know it's going to be a 3-hour writing session. And sometimes they just don't have that time and they'll just pass the booth.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've seen that a lot. So I think it's easier when you have less product and you can really focus in. We just did a booth for Corksicle, and they really used one shelf for just one collaboration that they did with the Basquiat estate on 3 bottles, and they used the entire 8-foot wall just for three bottles. And I think it was really impactful because they had a freestanding display and had all their other products on the other side, but they were able to focus in on the new release. And I think I was thinking about this before when you said like what's going to attract people into the booth. I think having that new release or that new product or just some sort of big impactful image about you and what you do is really important to the stand as well, just as important as the merchandising.
It's really interesting what you're saying there about the big idea, in terms of so many exhibitors just book a trade show because it's in my industry or my competitors are going, or we've always done it, without thinking, what am I actually going to talk to customers or to visitors about? What's the big news, the big launch, the new product, the new service, the improvement that people are going to be interested in? And you can sometimes see these kind of just very vague graphics, are very vague. We're here because we feel like we should be, but we don't really know what the point of it is. And that planning stage right at the beginning, where you absolutely nail your proposition and nail your objective, is so important for every decision you make then about your stand design.
I think it's good to actually just go to companies or let's just pick Nike. Go to their website and check out what they're doing. What's their landing page look like? That's probably something you should almost emulate at a trade show when you're launching a new product. Something very clean, very precise, unless you don't have anything new.
Yeah. Great piece of advice there, though, for anybody listening who is thinking about where do I start with my stand design. Check out some of the really big guys and see what their landing page looks like, and take some inspiration from that about how you can cleanly and comprehensively communicate what your offer is. So another great tip from Josh. We've had so many of them this episode. So, so thank you.
It's so much fun talking about exhibits. I mean, I've got a lot of friends that don't do them, and when you get in a room full of like-minded individuals talking about trade shows where you live and breathe it every single day, it's fun to finally talk about it. So it's been great talking to you about trade shows today. So.
Thank you. It's we're real exhibition geeks, and once we start, we sometimes can't stop, which isn't always great, but it is a fantastic industry to be in. So I'm sure people have been inspired by everything that they've heard from you today. We don't invite people onto our podcast just to promote themselves or for us to necessarily kind of promote them in any way, but I would encourage people to check out your website, because it's a really interesting development for a lot of problems that we know exhibitors struggle with. So again, they could just take some inspiration from that.
I just wanted to say, we're all on the same team here. Without exhibitors, there are no buyers, and then there's no exhibition industry. So making it more affordable for companies to exhibit at convention centers is really important. And I think we talked about this before, like, what type of guests you would like to have on the show. And I think it'd be really interesting to talk to some of the show managers of the show companies like Emerald or Urban to see what they're doing to kind of help exhibitors save money and help grow their attendance, as well as the exhibitor base.
Really interesting point, and I think we will we'll touch base with you on that one and get some names of people to follow up. And I love your comment saying we're all on the same team, because I think when we talk to exhibitors, sometimes it can feel a little bit transactional between event organizers and the actual exhibitors. And actually, if everybody has a good show, more visitors will come, more exhibitors will rebook early, the event organizers will have more that they can invest back into great content and creating more of a festival feel to it. So it works for everybody if we work together. And I just think that's such an important point. And it's great to hear like-minded people also kind of trying to change that culture if we are actually all on the same team.
Yeah. I mean, I love the face-to-face aspect of trade shows, and we have to keep this going. So I think we all need to do it together.
Absolutely. Well, it looks like it's an industry in pretty good health. I think the latest figures show there were 303 million visitors to trade shows globally last year. So no signs of the visitors staying away.
No. I mean, I go to a lot of shows. The exhibitor, like I mentioned, the Expo West is growing exponentially. There are some shows that are, consolidating and whatnot, depending on what the product is, if it's more commoditized product or whatever it may be. But it's exciting. I mean, it's amazing how many shows and how many different channels and different markets there are going on every city all around the world every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're anything like us, if you happen to be in a city on holiday or a little trip, you might just have a look at the convention center and see if there's anything happening. And if you can bag yourself an invite and go have a wander around, it gets that geeky when you're this excited about the industry.
Yeah, I was able to pop my hand at Comic-Con in San Diego a couple of years ago. That was a bit of a stampede, but pretty cool to see, how big a consumer-driven show can be.
Yeah.
I just want to mention one thing. I mean, trade shows are not the only aspect of, presenting at the events. It's also open houses. We've done a lot of booths for larger companies where they're actually bringing this smaller version of this booth to, say, a Walmart meeting or a Petco meeting to show their stand to store managers or whatever it may be. I just think there's a lot of other opportunities in exhibiting, whether it be to direct consumer or business to business or actually a retailer held event. So I just wanted to convey that, like, for other people out there, trade shows aren't just the only place to show your product.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point in terms of, if that trade show or exhibition becomes part of your aligned communication plan, therefore, why wouldn't you take some of the elements of your trade show, be it a smaller booth or just some of the collateral, to those kind of customer meetings to say, this is what we're all about, this is what we're doing. It looks the same. Are you joking?
Sorry. I just took the last sip of my coffee. I'm not dying, I promise.
Yeah, I don't want you to be the first death on our podcast.
No, I'm good. Way to end the podcast, though, right?
Well, we better let you go get some more to say. Josh, it's been fantastic speaking to you this week. Thank you so much for all your help and advice.
No, thank you. I look forward to ordering your book because that'll be a good read for sure. I'm excited.
Thank you. Just make sure you pick the right Exhibitionist on the Amazon. There are a few titles called The Exhibitionist. We're definitely the one that's about trade shows.
It's funny. I went on last night just to look and see if it was available yet, and I did see those covers. So that was pretty funny.
Yeah, if you can.
I love it though.
Brilliant. Well,
it's a great name. Yeah.
So, where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, our website is flatworksdisplays.com. That's plural, flatworks, and displays.com. We also have an Instagram page where a lot of our current images are on Instagram, so you can see what we're doing on the fly. That's probably the best place to find us, flatworksdisplays.com.
Thank you, Anna. Thanks so much for being a guest. And anybody who wants to get in touch, if you want to get in touch with us, we can pass on Josh's details. So have a great day, Josh.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
So hope you enjoyed that conversation with Josh. As I mentioned in the chat that we were having, we don't invite people onto the podcast or agree when people have approached us to come onto the podcast to just sell their products. And hopefully that didn't come across in that conversation. But so often we work with exhibitors who really struggle to find easy, cost-effective solutions that are also sustainable for smaller spaces. And we may have sounded quite excited about what Josh is doing in that conversation, but I really do think there is a great solution in there. So if you want more details about Josh and Flatworks, then please do get in touch with us. So that's about it for us for today. So we have a really busy 3 weeks coming up now. We are running the live theatres at the FIT Show in Birmingham, NEC, next week from the 21st of May. So that's the Windows, Doors and Fenestration Industries Trade Show. So if you're visiting that show at all, come and see myself on the Insight Theatre or Steve on the Discovery Theatre. We would love to meet you. The following week, it's completely different again, and we are staffing the Lactalis McClellan stand at the Royal Bath and West Show, which is a huge agricultural show down in the southwest. We have a team of people out there engaging with visitors and hopefully selling some cheese. And the week after, we are back at the NEC at Automechanica with the brilliant DPF recovery. We now know far more about diesel filters than we ever thought we needed to, but we'll be helping support them down at the show the following week at Automechanica. So if you're exhibiting or visiting any of those shows, we hope you have a fantastic time, and please do tweet or get in touch. We would love to meet you. So coming up in 2 weeks on the show, we're really excited about this. Not something that we've done before, but we're going to be recording a panel podcast on Tuesday night with some of the exhibitors at the FIT Show. And we'll be getting all their thoughts on what they were nervous about when they first started planning for the show, what the challenges were that they've overcome, what have they found on day one of the show, what have they been surprised by, what are they going to be changing for day two. And word has it, there might even be a few beers involved. So I'm sure that's going to be a fantastic session. So that'll be coming up in 2 weeks. As I mentioned right at the top of the show, The Exhibitionist is on sale now, and we would love to know what you think of the book. So please get in touch. And if you head over to www.inspiringexhibitors.com, you can also find all our blogs and sign up for the newsletter so you know exactly where we're going and what's happening, and also sharing our latest hints and tips from the industry. Have a great couple of weeks exhibitioning. You know where to get in touch with us, and we would love to hear from you. And we'll be back with you very shortly.
Hop over now to inspiringexhibitors.com to subscribe to our newsletters, blogs and future podcasts, keeping you up to date with industry insight. While there, you can also find out more about our new book, The Exhibitionist, Inspiring Trade Show Excellence. Once again, thank you for listening.